Hi, Kate Fry here with another video. This is my thoughts on the Capitol riot, the events in DC last week. Um, I feel much of the left has been kind of misreading a lot about what's going on. My take on it here, okay, so I work for a story, I work in a middle school and I work with mostly kids on the autism spectrum. I'm basically a special ed teacher. Work with kids on the autism spectrum and who have behavioral issues, the kids who have behavioral issues. Okay, I'm in a unit which is separate from the rest of the middle school. We work in a separate unit, which is under like different commands, so to speak. Okay, so every morning, the principal of the school as a whole gives a little talk via on the intercom, gives the morning announcements, and so forth. This is standard. Every school in the country probably has something like this. Gives a talk, delivers the morning announcements. They have nothing to do with us, with the unit I work in, but okay, is kind of loud, and we haven't figured out how to turn off the intercom or turn it down. So it's every morning at 10:30. He says the Pledge of Allegiance, the lunch, and then whatever morning announcements. Okay. And he's a principal, is a really nice guy. He means well, but okay. So about 2 months ago, the announcements started getting longer and longer, due to COVID. Now, the school I work at has been shut down several times. There have been cases of kids with COVID-19, and I think the school was shut down twice. For a 2 week period, we did remote learning. So the principal basically has been talking about this and reassuring kids, and it becomes reassuring the teachers and the parents or whatever. Okay, so last week after like the DC riot occurred on Thursday morning, his announcement was really long. He talked about the events in DC, and basically he said that some of you, so he was speaking to the students, some of you may be upset or have questions, and I know many of your teachers have questions. Also, this is a very difficult time in our country. And if you really need time aside, a teacher will be happy to talk with you and like will provide grief counseling. He didn't use the term grief counseling, but he might as well have. And he was going on for quite some time. And I thought this was a little odd. Like, as far as I know, the kids I talked with were barely aware that something happened in DC. Middle school kids, it's like generally it's several levels of abstraction above what they're fully aware of. Some kids kind of knew something happened. I don't. I mean, the kids I talked with were not a representative sample, but I don't know if anyone was really traumatized by it. I wouldn't say that people were actually traumatized by it. But the message the principal is giving is to the kids, this is something you're supposed to be traumatized by. I mean, clearly he was. And the teachers, as far as the teachers, the kids in the area I worked at couldn't care less about it. And the teachers said a few things, but wasn't really a big deal. It's just another day. The next day, the principal did the same thing, only he was a bit longer. He said, if man, this was on Friday morning. I think if anyone has any concerns, you can talk to your teacher, and we'll be available for you during the school day if you really need someone to talk to about this event. And oh god, and he talked about her interrupting, talked about attempt to disrupt the democratic process. And oh god, I don't know. I'm not sure how the regular teachers in the rest of the school have dealt with it. I mean, you could say that, yeah, sure, say a few things in the morning, see if any kids are concerned or questions, but don't make a big thing about it unless the kids, or as a group or one or two kids, seem like they are really concerned. But I seriously doubt any kids were traumatized by it. At several levels of abstraction outside of the world. Some of the young kids, like fifth graders, barely know what DC is. Kids that age often don't know what the capital of the United States is. So this is like a different world. Okay, leading into my take on what happened in DC, it wasn't a coup. It was not a coup or a coup attempt. What I saw happening, first of all, the Capitol Police knew this was going to happen. They had warning like weeks in advance, and they did nothing. It appears they had absolutely no preparation for this. They got offers of help, of assistance from like nearby agencies or police departments, and they either turned it down or ignored it. Seriously, they had no preparation whatsoever for this. And then it's on video. They let the protesters into the Capitol, onto the Capitol grounds. They opened the gate and let them in. That is, I'm not saying I don't know why they did. Maybe it was to diffuse tension. Maybe they felt they didn't have a choice. I'm not saying I know why they did. Maybe they sympathized with them. I don't really know. But the cops let the protesters into the Capitol building. And the back door of the Capitol building was unlocked. The scene of people storming the building, that happened a little bit later. There were people breaking in from windows. Yeah, they were let in to begin with, let onto the grounds to begin with. If there was a greater like security presence around there, none of that would have happened. So it was like waiting to happen. Now, inside, the there were some odd characters. The famous QAnon shaman guy dressed like Conan the Barbarian. Uh, it looks like he's more influenced by DMT and drug mysticism than he is by fascist ideology. There's a story going around. He's in jail now. Apparently, he was demanding vegan food, and the prison authorities are giving him vegan food. Uh, and so many leftists are really people on the left are really upset at that. I mean, people on the left or people of color are treated like crap when they're in prison. This guy's treated with kid gloves. Okay, there was the story of the guy with zip ties, which are used to like restrain people. And he claims he picked it up off the ground. Who knows what was going on? Uh, one guy couldn't have taken hostages. The cops above all let these people in. Um, also, this was videotaped. The protesters rushing up, storming up the stairs, like pushing around a cop who was there, trying to push them back, right, running up the stairs, and this was all live streamed from Nancy Pelosi's office. Like someone was already there, had already entered and live streamed, presumably with a laptop, wherever it's done. And it takes a few minutes to set up a live stream. So the Wi-Fi was still going on, and the Capitol cell phone transmission was still going on. However, they did inside the building, but it was cut off outside the building. That's a little odd as well. It's really odd. Whitney Webb and other people do think it was set up. Now, we do know in 9/11, I'm not a truther. I'm not a 9/11 truther. I don't, that's a whole nother story what was going on. But we do know it was definitely used to mobilize the population, like Pearl Harbor, to mobilize the population in a prolonged, horrifically disastrous war in Iraq and Afghanistan. There were some neocon elements with the famous Project for a New American Century. Back in the 90s, they tried to get Bill Clinton interested in invading Iraq. He said no, he knew it would be a disaster. They succeed. They use this opportunity to succeed with Bush. Russiagate narrative has definitely been weaponized. Russiagate's nonsense. It was cooked up to basically explain Trump's election, and it was used to partly a variety of uses, but to suppress dissent, suppress anything outside the mainstream narrative they're pushing. So the events in DC are going to be used in the same way. They're whipping up panic. Now, I don't support these people. I don't support Trump at all. I don't support. Apparently, according to Convo Couch, which is a leftist channel I'm watching, there were about 100,000 people came. I I don't know. They're claiming steal the vote, claiming that the election was stolen. I don't know. I don't really think it was. I haven't followed it very closely. The Convo Couch people from the left, they regard themselves as election integrity activists. They say we don't like Trump at all, but face the fact that maybe the election actually was stolen. I don't know. I mean, I don't really care. Actually, I haven't followed it closely, but it's not an irrational belief like the media says, seems like it is. it's we know the Democratic primaries were rigged 2016 and 2020, blatantly rigged. We know this. We know the 2000 election was stolen. That's obvious. Uh, Most likely the 2004 election was stolen. U.S. history further back, the 1960 election, Kennedy versus Nixon. Nixon actually narrowly won, but it was a daily political machine. Chicago gave it to Kennedy. They were both horrible candidates, but so it's happened in U.S. history. I kind of don't think it was stolen. And okay, the mainstream narrative, the liberal narrative, which has also been picked up by much of the left, is that Trump was a sore loser, and kind of was. Trump is an utterly bizarre, unhinged character. I don't apologize for him at all. He's an unhinged megalomaniac. He is what he is. But there are material reasons why people support him, and not just coming out of nowhere. Anyway, he was saying weeks and weeks on end that the election was stolen. The mainstream narrative made it look like he was a sore loser, and then he's whipping up a racist, fascist crowd to attack democracy. I just think it's misreading what's happened. I have no support for Trump, and I don't identify with his supporters at all. But the whole thing is so much different than the mainstream narrative. Convocation and other leftist sources have talked to some of the protesters who were there, not who broke into the Capitol, but the people who were there. Mixed bag. What I've picked up, some of them were, traditional conservatives, people who regard themselves as religious Christians or whatever, or, really, times small town Rotary or Chamber of Commerce types, and they feel they feel some big government elite is taking rights away from them. That was part of the element. There were libertarians there, QAnon people there. There were right wingers, far right wingers, white supremacists. There were fascist elements there, and all these ideologies kind of mesh in with one another. They're not all entirely separate. And lots of people are saying, this is product of decades of neoliberalism, of neglect, of alienation under capitalism, things like that. Yeah, certainly. More recently, part of COVID-19, like these people, Trump supporters are largely a petty bourgeois crowd, some working class, but largely people who were there were petty bourgeois, that is small business owners and professional people, doctors, lawyers, business managers, things like that. That's the general layer. And they sound privileged. Some ways they are privileged, but this layer was very hard hit by the pandemic. I mean, what's basically happening, and seems to be deliberate, the US economy is being massively restructured, and about a third of all businesses will close. What I've read, estimates I've come across, and most likely devoured by big companies of monopoly capital like Amazon and Google, things like that. They're devouring, and many small businesses are being closed and pushed out of business. It's a major restructuring of the US economy, pretty dramatic. It may be even deliberate policy. Okay, so the petty bourgeois, this layer traditionally supports, is a supporter, not traditionally supports, is a supporter of fascism. Fascist movements come out of this layer. I think there isn't a mass fascist movement in the U.S. right now, but there's definitely the possibility of this developing in the near future. So that's what we have to watch out for. So I remember Jimmy Dore had a video a couple weeks ago, interviewed a woman, ran a restaurant in California, Pasadena, I guess. It was pushed out of business, and literally, some chain like Amazon, I think it was Amazon, actually was literally starting a restaurant right next door. She was pushed out of business by basically by the shutdown, by COVID. She had to close, and literally right next door, Amazon, or some major corporation, was starting their own restaurant. So, and I posted this. People said, who cares about the petty bourgeois? Who cares about these people? I kind of get the point. I've had many jobs in the low wage sector myself, and I kind of hate small business owners. I kind of get the point. But the fact is, this layer gravitates, if they don't see anything on the left, they gravitate towards fascism. So, like, a leftist movement should not orient towards the petty bourgeois, but they should have something to offer them. Like, we don't give a shit if you go out of business. They'll move to the right. Uh, all class social, they move to whoever looks like has the most energy. If there's not a left movement, they'll move to the right. Okay, so that's a situation we're facing. So my hunch anyway is that we're being played. There are some forces going on. I have no support for Trump and I don't like his followers. It is scary, but the forces on the other side are equally scary. Keep in mind, both sides are cops, basically. Large number of Trump supporters are cops, or apparently have coming out that are off-duty cops. But they're cops versus cops. I mean, security state, police state on one hand, but the cops, right-wing cops on the other hand. It's kind of ironic. So the incoming Biden administration is a little scary. There's talk about a Patriot Act 2.0. Biden basically wrote the original Patriot Act. I mean, he wrote the core in the 90s, wrote the core of what became the Patriot Act. Patriot Act itself was written by Sensenbrenner, but he wrote the core of what became the Patriot Act, and he often brags about it. And it's pretty scary. These are people who don't like protest at all. So I'm afraid they're going to weaponize this whole thing for a major crackdown. And the left is going to be mostly hurt. The ruling class, I think, was really shaken up by the BLM protests in June and July. It was unexpected, came from out of nowhere. Didn't last long. It was brought back into electoralism. Uh, the Biden campaign basically, the Democrats destroyed it like they destroy every popular movement. But that really shook up the ruling class, and they want to make damn sure nothing like this happens again. So we don't know. There's talk about a Patriot Act 2.0. We don't know what's in it. I haven't found out any, but I'm sure something like this is along the pipeline, and it could criminalize, consider it like considered insurrection. Any major protest, like the major in 2011, there was a month-long sit-in, an occupation of the Madison of the Wisconsin state capitol in Madison to protest Scott Walker, who was basically destroying unions. Went on for a month, ultimately failed, but it went on for a month. This could criminalize this. It would be considered insurrection, sedition. It would criminalize anything like that. Very possibly taking down Confederate statues would be criminalized. Blocking, like BLM, blocking highways would be criminal. Would be considered treason or sedition. Possibly any major protest march. I've been to about over the years, probably 5 or 6 protest marches to DC, mostly anti-war. Protests didn't accomplish anything, but I was there. And something like that could be made illegal. They're jumping on this to really start possibly a major crackdown. I think we're all being played. Again, I don't think it was a fascist coup. There were some unstable characters who were certainly there. It appeared, there's no crowd control whatsoever. Often a layer of people who aren't used to going to mass demonstrations, and mob violence. Looks like some mob violence escalated. Psychology, happens, and there were a fair number of unhinged characters. I don't think any of that points to an organized coup attempt, and I don't also buy this narrative that Trump has been attempting a coup. I don't think he ever tried it. The COVID crisis, was his ideal opportunity to pull something like that. He did not centralize power. In fact, he let it devolve to the states. He had almost total inaction. Like, he lost power during the thing. It would have been his ideal chance to centralize power in his own hands, and he didn't do it. That points to the fact that he never really intended a coup. His stunt in D.C. back in June, in front of the Episcopal Church that in Lafayette Square, it was trying to look Napoleonic to his base, law and order. I don't think it was literally a coup, and there was pushback from the military, like, well, we're not on board with this. The pushback was pretty dramatic. There were memos and things like that. Pushback was pretty dramatic. I think they're worried about unit cohesiveness, like they have people of color being used to suppress the Black Lives Matter protest. Maybe they mutiny, or we could actually have a civil war or a revolution. They knew this, and they didn't want to. They didn't want to go there, and they warned, strong warning to Trump, they weren't going to go along with this. I don't think Trump himself ever attempted a coup d'état or some kind of dictatorship, or somehow force himself to stay in office. He just didn't have the social forces. He didn't have the institutional support, any major social force. He does have, he's riling up some alienated petty bourgeois layers, and yeah, sure, that is that element. They're not nearly powerful enough to take state power. Okay, back to the petty bourgeois layers. Includes a variety of people. They don't really have. They're really disoriented. They're up against it and they're facing tough times, but they can't really see the way forward. They're too disjointed, too diverse. They're a bunch of different right wing ideologies. So they're easy prey for a demagogue like Trump or these right wing ideologies. They're an easy prey. In a way, this whole contest is between different factions. The ruling class is using different factions of the petty bourgeois against themselves. The right wing or Trump has been mobilizing his own crowd. Then liberals are whipping up this hysteria over Trump for their own purposes. One section of the petty bourgeois against another. Like NPR is oriented towards like the professional managerial class, and the CNN, NBC have their own narratives. People do laugh at right with QAnon, the right wing narratives. The Trump supporters do have their subculture network of YouTube pundits and local journalists or whatever. Same as the liberals do, and same as the left does. Um, the ideology is kind of irrational, but it's no more irrational than thinking that no more irrational thinking Putin is running the U.S. government or Putin helped get Trump elected. There's been no evidence for that whatsoever. But we've been pushed with this RussiaGate diet for the past 4 years. There's been a tsunami of it on the media, and it's kind of been discredited by now, but it's ingrained within the liberal consciousness. Is just insane. So liberals are not. There's a cult around Trump, definitely. Much the liberal critique of Trump is 100% correct, but liberals have the same thing. They have their own cults. They have their own. So we're in a messy situation. The media is gonna whip up a feeling of hysteria. Like the school I work with I don't think anybody really cared, except the principal and a few other people. They bought into this liberal narrative and the idea that our democracy is in peril. For anything, the liberal people on the radical left aren't really so much saying this, but liberals are saying this big time. It was attempt to disrupt the democratic process, the sacred democratic process. The U.S. The election in the U.S. isn't remotely a democracy of any sorts, even a bourgeois democracy of any like major industrial power. The U.S. actually has the least democratic and most backward electoral system. We know the Democratic primaries were definitely rigged. Bernie Sanders got hundreds of thousands of people, tens of thousands of people to his rallies. Biden got lucky if he got a dozen. He won like one primary, and people thought he was a joke. He was a joke candidate. His slogan was "No more larky," like something from the 1940s slogan. Who is this guy? Who is this guy? And he clearly had dementia. However, Sanders dropped out. It was arranged so Sanders dropped out and Biden, some ridiculous figure, was elevated to be the presidential candidate. No one even liked him. Probably like some of the so some of the exit polls in the primary showed Sanders way ahead, but yet Biden won by larger margins. Doesn't add up. The famous app in the Iowa caucuses. It seemed to be there's definitely some conniving. They did not want Bernie Sanders as their candidate, and Sanders himself ran a ridiculously weak campaign. He started after he Biden began winning a few primaries. The pandemic came along. Obama or Scott Buttigieg and Klobuchar to drop out. Eventually, Elizabeth Warren stayed in long enough to drain votes away from Sanders. Then finally, Obama got Sanders himself to drop out, probably reassuring him his concerns would be heard, or whatever. And of course, they weren't. The Biden administration is set to be a very far right wing corporate Democrat administration. That's the situation. So there's no democracy. These people weren't elected, and of course, the vice president. Kamala Harris got no electoral votes. Tulsi Gabbard took her down in the debates, and there's a slogan, "No one roasts a pig like a Hawaiian." And I thought that was great. Tulsi Gabbard called out some of her horrible abusive practices as California Attorney General. No one liked her, deeply unpopular figure, but she was elevated. She's vice president, and most likely she will be president. I think it's likely sometime that Biden will resign. I mean, I don't think he's really capable. And she's not a figure in her own right. She's part of the Clinton machine. There were close ties between her campaign, Hillary Clinton's campaign. When Tulsi Gabbard destroyed her campaign, Hillary Clinton lost it, and famously lost it. Called her accused Tulsi of being a Russian agent. I mean, it's kind of so. Anyway, it's not a democratic or sacred democratic procedure. The narrative also that Trump was whipping up these white supremacist, racist mobs to uh, grains of truth to it, but not quite. One thing that what I've picked up, Trump definitely called his supporters to D.C. and that's legal. It's I've been to demos in D.C. I mean, legal right to do this. He didn't really call them to storm the Capitol. They were there during the time when they were certifying Biden's win. Yes, but he didn't. He didn't actually say storm the Capitol. He not that I like Trump, not that I like any of these people, but well, to be fair, he didn't say that. It was just a perfect storm of bad circumstances after that's being weaponized. Um, okay, also, there's apparently the 20th of Biden is the inauguration. Here, you're hearing a lot on the media how there's expected to be violence in all 50 state capitals. And CNN is pushing this narrative over and over and over. They're almost like hoping there will be violence. The same thing, like they kept predicting, like months ago, back in December, whatever, back a few, earlier than that. I mean, before the election, like last summer from August, they kept repeating over and over that violence was expected during the election. It's going to be some kind of shitstorm. They kept beating the drum over and over, like it was a self fulfilling prophecy. And somewhat surprisingly, the election went okay. There wasn't any violence, but this is the violence that they've been talking up. Whitney Webb kind of thinks it was some level set up. Not the basic details are debatable, but at some level they kind of wanted this stuff to occur. They apparently right now there are about 4,000, over 4,000 troops, or National Guard troops, probably Army as well, in D.C. for the installation and inauguration of Biden, which partly shows how unpopular Joe Biden is. I mean, if he was a wildly popular president, they wouldn't have to have a huge troop presence there. Okay, so anyway, over the last few years, liberals and the liberal media has been whipping up an almost irrational hysteria against Trump. Not that I like Trump either, but there really is Trump derangement syndrome. Trump is the unrelenting focus of just about all attention, all political energy. It's Trump, either for Trump or against Trump's odd figure. He's like a black hole sucking up all political energy one way or another. It's odd. And I think there's a spirit among like Biden supporters, among the mainstream liberals of they want revenge. They want revenge. There are a couple of scary memes going on that like we're gonna hunt you down, we're gonna ruin your life, we're gonna take your kids, we're gonna make you lose your job. I mean, it's kind of like that's the real fascism. I mean, the fascist was supposedly voted out of office, but look who we have. So anyway, of course, big news in media. Trump was banned from Twitter. He's been suspended, I think, once or maybe twice before. He was finally banned from Twitter. Parler was taken down. Okay, I'm not gonna go out of my way to defend Trump. It is a little interesting. It's kind of a power struggle. A major Silicon Valley they took Trump down not for inciting violence, but for specifically saying uh, he would not attend Biden's inauguration, which he has a perfect right to do so. Biden himself said he'd be okay with this. It's not illegal, but they took him down for saying this. They interpreted this as as provoking violence, which is the reason for taking him down. Interestingly, Twitter did not take Trump down when he really did uh, try to incite violence, did threaten violence. At one point he threatened to bomb, I believe it was 25 UNESCO cultural sites in Iran, which would have been horrific, horrific war crime. He actually threatened, we're going to bomb your sites. He threatened on Twitter to bomb the hell out of Iran and do enormous cultural and historical damage. And Twitter didn't take him down for that. That's the one time we actually did threaten violence, but that was at the service of the empire. Then I kind of this whole spat in D.C. that no, spat that wasn't inciting violence. It was a perfect storm, largely due to the utter incompetence of the Capitol security. Not that I like Trump, and so anyway, it's yeah, a lot of people are cheering Twitter on. I'm not going to defend Trump. I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way to defend the guy, but it is a Silicon Valley company won a power struggle against the president of the United States, and they're going to use this against the left as well. I mean, there's always been persecution against the left online, of course, but it's like a wedge issue is going to probably massively accelerate. Same thing with Parler was a most supposedly like some people call it Nazi Twitter. It was like Twitter, only more it was uncensored, so right away the right wing gravitated towards it, who were being banned on Twitter or other social media. They gravitated towards Twitter. There were a few leftists on Twitter as well. I got just like 2 days before they shut it down, just to see what it was all about. I'll see if there's some libertarian people I could connect with, try to get interested in my videos or something like that. It didn't really look, a brief time I was on it, didn't really look that interesting. Anyway, that's been shut down. It's not going to block left right wing organizing at all. They have their own ways of organizing. In fact, if they do organize right wing groups, organize on social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, it's open to public view. Even if they have closed groups, it's pretty easy to find out. Anything online is open to public view. Why not know what they're doing? So I don't follow that argument. And okay, so Ron Paul has been banned from Twitter. Now, I'm definitely not a Ron Paul fan. Some people on the left kind of liked him for a while. He was anti-war. Occasionally, he does say some good things. I felt his libertarian ideology is confusing to the working class. It's a bit dangerous. But, having said this, why not like democratically argue, debate someone you disagree with? I believe in no platforming for fascists. Yes. I don't believe in just wholesale. Apparently, the grounds for banning Ron Paul was because he disagreed with the banning policy, which is that's what I picked up. Like that's insane. Like saying you're banned from Twitter because you don't like Jack Dorsey's beard. He's the CEO or founder of Twitter. I mean, it's like weird. It's very narrowing down the consent, narrowing this like manufacture of consent, which Noam Chomsky and many others talked about. Social media is pushing a very narrow corporate narrative. The attack is against the right wing right now, but it could go elsewhere very soon. Now, I think so much of the left has been misreading what's been going on, both with the DC riot and with Trump all along. More recently, there's a big drive to fight fascism, which is totally understandable, sure, but so many people are keyed into fighting fascism and seeing fascism as the main threat. I think they're missing what's happening. I think there are often many people using the wrong historic analogy. It's not the beer hall putsch. What happened last week in DC was not a beer hall putsch. It was more Reichstag Fire. I think that's a much better analogy. The Reichstag Fire, original Reichstag Fire was supposedly set of a communist group. Uh, Vanderluber, I think the guy whose name was kind of set up by the Nazis. This was a right wing group. It set attacked the Capitol, but the same thing is being weaponized by the ruling class. Trump was never going to pull a coup. It's just not possible. They're whipping up this hysteria. It just not wasn't in the cards. So yeah, the kidnapping attempt of Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She became a flashpoint. She had a state lockdown. Some right wing groups were opposing this, and they went to marched in the state capitol. And okay, well, the kidnapping attempt against her, it was set up by the FBI. It turns out the leader, the ringleader of this so-called plot, the kidnapper, was an FBI informant, and he was paid $30,000 to do it. The FBI, we know, has pulled this shit during the Bush administration at least several times. They foil these Muslim terror plots, which they created themselves. They created online, get these alienated kids involved. Many of these terror plots do seem to have some odd state connections. The Boston Bomber case, the guy involved, the kid involved, the FBI had been apparently harassing his family for quite some time. They harass, using psychological manipulation until they get someone to do these stupid acts. They've done they've done with leftists as well. Uh, famous case where they got these kids to literally build Molotov cocktails to use at the Republican National Convention. And the guy who coached Brendan Darby was an FBI informant who coached them all along how to do this and trap, basically classic entrapment, and wrecked people's lives. I mean, people go to jail for years for this, totally wrecking people's lives. So they're setting this stuff up. They're setting up a climate of fear. Much of U.S. culture is based on fear. We have a large, whole complicated reasons for this. So the right wing is definitely based on fear. You could say U.S. is a settler state history, stole it from the Native Americans and other peoples, and probably some subliminal guilt and at some level, and probably some intense fear of black and brown people, the petty bourgeois fear of black and brown people who will take what we've earned, or and there's during the Cold War fear whipped up of external communists and external enemies. Well, this element is part of liberal thinking as well. Liberals fear the Russians or the Chinese or all these odd groups, or the Russians are somehow behind Putin. Liberals have this fear too. It's from American exceptionalism. We have this great, wonderful country, and all these foreign enemies are constantly trying to attack us, and they whip up this fear. Okay, well, I think that's about it. Just wanted to share some of my thoughts on this. I'm working to grow my YouTube channel. I don't have time during the week to make as many videos as I'd like. I hope you enjoy. If you do like this, please subscribe. Please like, because it helps the algorithm. More people get to see it, more people like the videos. Also, subscribe. I am building up my channel, and recently I am developing something of a following, which is gratifying. So we'll see how it goes. And I think, yeah, I think from here on forward, I think in terms of Trump only has like 9 days in office or 8 days in office. Oh yeah, I mentioned mentioned the impeachment stuff going on. So the impeachment moves apparently today. I believe the Senate is voting on whether to have a bill on impeachment. It sounds a little weird. I mean, they're impeaching Trump like when he has like what 6 or 7 days left of his administration. Um, People like AOC wouldn't fight for health care, wouldn't when forced to vote when she wouldn't go up against Pelosi to fight for health care, but she's a big hero fighting to impeach a president whose term is going to end in 6 days, 6 or 7 days. Uh, I guess the thing about impeachment, or maybe invoking the 25th Amendment, would be so Trump can't run again. Okay, but this is really odd. Also, like, are they that afraid of Trump, the person, of the figure of Trump? They really lack confidence in their own politics that they can beat Trump. It's the American people they don't trust. Like, do they really? Uh, are they really afraid that if the American people had a choice, they would choose Trump again, who was supposedly the worst president in history, and even if not that, he was a horrible guy. Are they really that afraid? Is he like Dracula? They have to put a stake in his heart. I mean, a lot of this is because of political grandstanding and stuff, but it is still really odd. Also interesting, all these Republican figures are now have used the events in D.C. to distance themselves from Trump. So many. What's her name? The Secretary of Education resigned. Oh, this is not who we are as a people. Yeah, he's a vile, horrible character. Well, these really corrupt, vile figures are also now heroes of the resistance, distancing themselves from Trump. Apparently, Susan Collins, who's a senator from Maine, she's her vote for Kavanaugh made her intensely unpopular, and I was surprised she was reelected. But Kavanaugh, but she actually apparently claimed when she saw what was going on in the Capitol, she thought there was the Iranians attacking, which shows you the weird, extreme ignorance of these people and the narrow bubble they live in. It wasn't Iranian attack on the Capitol, which is pretty absurd. Which is so anyway. Uh, so there's a theory that this might force a split in the Republican Party. There's a smaller group which will follow Trump. They'll split, and there might be another party. There's been talk of this for a while. I mean, the Tea Party started to split from the Republican Party. They were co-opted back in. Essentially, they took it over basically. But this might be a little different, a little more longer-lasting split. Though who knows what's going to happen. The events in DC overall were very convenient for a lot of people. And I don't know what's going to happen during the inauguration. I think everyone just should stay calm. They're setting up for another media shitstorm in state capitals. They're setting up for something. I think leftists should stay away from the inauguration. This is not the time to fight fascists. They're essentially, the whole thing is protecting Biden. We have to protect Biden. And, so that's it. I hope you enjoy my video and have a good day.